Hello Libra, and welcome to your monthly horoscope for January for the Sun or the Ascendant. I'm going to share with you the broad themes that you can expect this month, but please stay with me because then I will dive deep and give you in forensic detail all the influences and the dates that are set to be key. So on the screen now you can see your chart wheel for the start of the month. And in house 4, we have the Sun, as always, but Mercury, the planet of communication, Venus, your ruler of relating, and Pluto, the planet of passion. So a lot of energy in Capricorn. And that's been a very big influencer in your overall situation for some years. But this year's a bit different because look, house 3, we have the Moon and Mars close together in the sign of Sagittarius. If we take the point from the Moon and the Sun in Capricorn, and that is also in Sagittarius, your third house. The third house is going to give you a voice, but particularly because Mars is very close to the Moon, you're going to be more urgent in how you express your ideas this month, and dare I say also throughout this year. So all that fourth house energy has been pushing you in recent years to set a boundary, to know where the very giving and obliging part of your nature, which has been emphasized by Neptune in house 6, very sacrificing, you're being asked to be stronger in saying no. So it's about reinforcing your boundaries, but also feeling comfortable in your environment. So changes at home are key. There could be greater dialogue with neighbours or siblings in this month because of that collection of energy in Sagittarius too. But also at the start of this month, Jupiter, the planet of good luck, has moved into your 6th house. So that's going to strengthen your health. You had 2 quick visits last year, but it's back for a longer journey this year, but it will also be going into your sector of relationships. So it can be a very exciting year for you Librans, but it is about protecting your best interests and not being quite so caught up is a strong expression. But Libran people can be very attentive to other people's needs. And I'm just saying that's great, but just find the tipping point between your needs and others' needs in just that perfect way. And that's the theme of this month as you start this new year. There is a new moon on the 2nd. It sparkles magnificently with Uranus. But hey, Uranus was mischief making last year with Saturn, and unfortunately they are still in conflict this year too. So Saturn in your sector of self-expression and joys, well, that means you've got to work at your creativity, you've got to work at romantic relationships. And Uranus is in house 8 of devotion. That will try to separate you from those unsatisfactory romantic involvement or creative involvements that you have. And Mercury, once it moves into Aquarius on the 2nd, it is asking you to demonstrate your talents, but in a way which makes you feel really fulfilled. Something that is important to us all, but sometimes does get forgotten. So those are the broad strands. If you would be so good to subscribe to my channel, if you've yet to do so, please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. And if you've yet to order your year 2022 personal forecast, you can do so now. If it's in 21, the last part of the year, I will give you the rest of that year free. If you order later in January, you will get 12 months from the time of the order, plus a character analysis, plus 30% off. Gain searing insights to what the development of your personal situation offers this year, and see the link beneath this video. So Libra, your January forecast. That cluster of energy in Capricorn. Capricorn's a cardinal sign like yours to do with leadership. It's very traditional. It very much enhances how things have been. It's to do with stability. It can be quite a conservative type of energy. But for you it represents the 4th house, which is to do with how we feel. how our relationships are within our family, where we live, who we live with, and how. And all those issues, I think, are going to be to the fore for you this month. But as they have been for some time, of course. But what makes this month different is that the midpoint between the moon and the sun in Sagittarius, and the fact that Mars is right by the moon in Sagittarius in the 3rd house, means that you will be articulating your side of your feelings with a lot more thrust. And that's a good thing, because I don't think it's necessarily easy for Libran people to upset the apple cart, because you do inherently like a lot of balance, a lot of peace, and you can be so skilled at reaching into other people's needs. So you are being asked to be a bit more, not defensive, but certainly aware of the pivot point between your needs and others with great clarity. Now, because Venus is retrograde, there is the potential for some deep thinking around these very sensitive strands and areas, but also the potential for a relationship to be rebirthed. It's not necessarily just the concept of separation. The separation in your chart, I think, or the potential for it romantically, probably comes more from the grinding right angle between Saturn and Uranus, which is repeated from last year. That is going to fade out really by the end of February, first week of March. But because it's in the solar return, it's going to be a background echo. And that's kind of saying that where you are needing to be committed, but you feel thwarted, you can't breathe, you don't have a sense of being authentically yourself, because you're needing to sacrifice so much of your individuality to make someone else happy. Well, that's not a good relationship. So that might be what informs what seems like Venus retrograde. But I think Venus retrograde is just making you think very carefully about it all. But the real stimulus for any change is coming from Uranus, quite honestly. Saturn in the 5th house, it's not much about joy, but the 5th house is about joy. So something has to give. So if you want rightful joyfulness, we have to work for it. As you know, I've got the ascendant in Libra. So this is as true for me as it is for you. But also Mercury. Mercury's been in shadow for about the last 4 or 5 days of last year. So as we come into this new year, even though it's still in Capricorn, that may have made you a bit more inward looking just as the year comes to a close. Even though Jupiter moved for the last 3 days into the sign of Pisces, which is very good for physical health and is there at the start of this month. So then when the transit of Mercury to Aquarius occurs on the 2nd, which coincides with the new moon, yes, that can bolster Saturn and can make you, be very proactive around your talents and creative strands. But the new moon occurs in the sign of Capricorn, but links with Uranus. So this is pushing you to think about liberating yourself to create more security, but it may feel that you might have to give up something in order to get to that point. And if you're really reluctant to do that, to upset that proverbial celestial apple cart, that could see you stick rather than twist. But it's all down to you. It's not down to what I'm telling you to do. And in fact, the link between Uranus and the new moon is very, very good. It's saying that you can find solutions, particularly around property matters, but it just may take a little bit more thinking about it or exploring. It might not quite fire forwards at quite the pace that you'd like. Now, there is going to be some big developments later this month, but I just want to tell you about Venus's link with Neptune in the first 12 days, because Venus, your ruler, despite its retrograde, is forging one of the most gentle, most beautiful links with Neptune over the first 12 days. And it could be that you're going to have a connection with someone at an emotional level where you feel more supported, where you feel they understand your practical needs, but it's more that they just get where you're coming from that's so important to you. So that's lovely. Also later in this month, the last 2 weeks, Venus is forging a terrific angle to Uranus. So Uranus again comes to you in a very helpful way, particularly if you can be very imaginative about how you can make longer term finances work for you well. So that is stepping outside the normal approaches to things, being more inventive, which is what Uranus can be very much about. It may mean redeploying your existing resources in a fresh way. So, for example, that could be refinancing or selling one property in order to get another, or it could be about extending an existing property that you desire to live in simply because it gets a better value, which then helps you further down the line. So all this kind of very flexible thinking is going to be necessary for you. But it is true on the 14th that Mercury does formally go retrograde. So any social strands could be inhibited by that a little bit. On the 17th, however, we have a blockbuster full moon in the sign of Cancer. Your emotions are going to be close to the surface. You don't always like that. Sometimes you can be quite inscrutable. You don't like to show your vulnerability because you feel people will judge you, and you like to maintain a very poised, stylish, classy, sometimes rather arty facade. But underneath that, this particular full moon could be quite challenging because the sun has moved forwards to move on to Pluto, and because Venus has gone inwards from its connection with Pluto, which happened in December, and therefore some big politics could come up, and it may mean over the following 2 weeks that you do make some major decisions about who you live, where you live there. If you're in a job that doesn't give you much personal satisfaction but has loads of emotional dynamics and responsibilities, that could be something that you look to change. But on the 20th, the sun returns to Aquarius, which is your sister air sign. This is a great transit because this will lift the retracting energies of Saturn. And I must stress that when I do my personal one-to-one work, Saturn often coincides with breakthroughs for people, especially when it moves across houses or critical points. We mustn't see Saturn and Jupiter in binary terms. Jupiter's amazing, Saturn's awful. It just doesn't work like that. But the sun moving into the 5th house is going to bolster Saturn and the retreating Mercury for sure. Then on the 24th, Mars moves into Capricorn, where it's exalted. It loves being here. If you've ever thought of working from home, this can be good. If you're going to physically get those changes going at home, this will give you the drive to achieve it. But Mars in the 4th house can be somewhat defensive. So in the next 6 weeks, just watch you not being oversensitive and then a bit rah-rah in response. Hard not to be in some ways. The 29th, however, Venus ends its retrograde. But as I said before, it is sparkling brilliantly with Uranus for the 2 weeks before then. So maybe Uranus being the planet of truth as it is, and the 8th house being the sector of psychology, maybe Uranus in its connections to the Sun and Venus this month, and even Saturn in some ways, is going to force an essential truth into the open. It may be one that you're reluctant to confront, but it can happen. But some kind of transformation about where you live, how you live there, who with, setting your boundaries, a close emotional or familial relationship can improve, or it could separate. I don't think there are any set rules for Venus retrograde because you can see it's forging some tremendous links this month. The biggest aggravant continues to be Saturn square Uranus, and that's really pushing you to make a choice. And sometimes for us Libra folks, sitting on the fence and thinking about things and really meditating about things, well, sometimes we need to take set decisions and actions, and that's where Mars being on the moon on your solar return in the 3rd house can make you much more decisive this year. And someone somewhere is going to be surprised by how to the point you and I will be. It's been a real pleasure being with you. All the best for this new year, and goodbye for now.